Let's turn our focus to this now. Some civil society organizations are beginning to call for transparency in the National Lottery's fourth selection process. It looks at, of course, the operator that is likely to gain over, 180 billion rands in this license. Well, Ithuba, which is currently the operator, will hand over the reins to a new bidder when its contract expires in June 2025. United Civil Society in Action is one such civil society organization. The president of the organization, Tebogo Sithathu, joins us now for a conversation. Good to have you, and thank you very much for your time this evening. The fourth national lottery application process seemingly hitting a snag at every turn at this particular point. Well, there's a new minister in place. Having had the license now extended for 18 months, he seems to have also halted what would have been an announcement by the end of September of the new operator. What do you make of these developments?
No, thank you, Tabo, and good evening to all the viewers of Newzroom Afrika. Yeah, you know, we were all hoping when news broke out that there was a cleanup of corruption at the National Lottery Commission. But what we have realized is like things have gotten from better to worse. Why do I say that? Because look at how the funding issues have been stalled, how civil society organizations, community organizations, I'm talking about your non-profit organizations, I'm talking about your non-profit companies who are supposed to be beneficiaries of the funding that is at the National Lottery Commission. They're not benefiting anything. And what you find is that also on the licensing issue, the commission is doing a very terrible job to a point where the whole process have been tampered with. There is so much interference. And this interference began with the previous minister. So I want to, for now, up until we engage with the new minister, exonerate him from all this nonsense. But the previous minister was just incompetent. I don't know how he made it through the two terms, and he was never held accountable for anything. But what I can tell you is that he has played some javelin strategy here. He knew he was going to leave, and he tampered with the whole process of the next operator. And I don't think it was going to be credible. So we are watching the space. And if all those other bidders, when you read from media reports, it suggests that it's a done deal for some and not for others, which also should be raising a lot of questions. How can something that is due become a done deal already? So those speculations are very worrying.
So, I mean, where you're sitting now, you would support a call for a review of the process, the application process so far, because there are some who are saying, look, the NLC board was playing a consultant role for certain bidding companies and so on and so forth. Of course, allegations they have refused and rejected to say, no, they're not even involved in this. What they do is really adjudicate and interview companies and give over to the minister.
Absolutely, Tabo. And so even before we get here, and the question would still be, how did we get here? Number one, did you know, and I want the South African public to understand that this board is illegal. The only person who followed due process to be where he is onto the board and being the chairperson is Professor Banipijana. Because if you look back, during the tenure of the late Portfolio Committee Chairperson, Duman, when he was still alive, who was overseeing the process during Patel's tenure. Patel at that time tampered with the process, and the Portfolio Committee had to instruct him to start the whole process all over again. And he was the only person who had been interviewed in that process. And when he came, he was made to continue. However, all the other board members were not following that due process. So, number one, they are illegal. That's one. And if you have illegal people, how can you expect a legal process or a legal outcome out of that? So I would urge that this review be seriously looked at by the current minister, so that at the end of it all, it's not a waste of taxpayers' money, wherein at the end of the day, there's going to be litigation. There's bound to be litigation because of, I'm sure all the bidders are waiting, and when this whole process goes against them, they're going to litigate. I can tell you that, because of nobody's happy. And it's not us who are saying that. We are also picking this up in the public domain. And that's why we are actually weighing in on the matter, because of civil society is a very important component and of this process. But more often than not, we are left out of this kind of discussions, which is very unfortunate.
Well, others might say this board is actually doing some degree of cleanup. I mean, if you look just this week, we are reporting of 2 arrests that could have taken place of individuals who were posing as members of boards of NPOs. Turning out they actually were not. And so the hawks were on them. The investigations that the SIU is currently also embarking on or at the NLC. So one could say this particular board is doing a lot of cleanup.
Yeah, well, depends what cleanup is, Thabo. And we do appreciate, and I think I want us to be on record to say that we support any initiative to fight against corruption. But we also must look at why is this fight so selective. I will tell you, we've always questioned the legitimacy of the so-called proclamation that was signed by the president. It is targeting specific individuals, and I'm not here to defend them. We are not here to defend them because we are not their spokespersons. They are old enough to defend themselves. But if you want to clean up, you've got to open up the files from way back. We know that this period that the proclamation was signed based on is some form of witch hunt. So we want to encourage that transparency of fighting corruption, fight it across the board. Don't target a specific period, because we can tell you that there are other projects that ought to be investigated, but they are not being investigated. And there seems to be some selection and of targeting of certain individuals. And if they've done wrong, definitely the law should take its course. But also, Thabo, what we are not happy about, do you know how much money the NLC spends on SIU? So what's the point of spending 100 rands to try and recover 10 rands? So also those things need to be looked at. We need a balance. So because of, remember how the SIU gets paid. It gets paid by the institution that it investigates. So we're also worried about how much money is being spent there, the money that could be spent on the rightful beneficiaries, that is community-based organizations. And they're spending, I can tell you the figure reaches up to 100 million in the last 2 financial years. But this is the other issue of the NLC having closed funding, open funding for a short while. They closed it and they said there's the budgetary constraints. They have not fulfilled their mandate. People have applied, they have not responded, they don't have capacity. It's all been written about. And even ground up, their favorites have written about the lacking capacity, which they've admitted that they are unable to adjudicate on projects. So they have actually been failed in their mandate. And
but Mr. Sithathu, others can look at this and say, but you can't have your cake and eat it at the same time. You know, you're calling for transparency, yet you take Roundup and the NLC to court, say, no, don't publish the detail of beneficiaries. Which one is which?
We are not there. Remember, we are not there. We are past that issue of publishing beneficiaries' details. No, I'm just mentioning Roundup to say that they are the ones who are in close cahoots with NLC, but they've published the issue of the incompetency, of the lack of capacity that the NLC has failed in delivering on its mandate, and they are citing that they don't have the distribution agency members that are full-time. Whose problem is that? It's a problem of management. But this board, Thabo, I think with the limited time that we've got, this board is illegal, this board is incompetent, this board must go, it must be removed, and this board has tainted the process of the next operator, which is going to cause us to litigate, and when we litigate, we will waste money, public funds that we ought to be saving.
So you're saying you're alleging political interference. Now, of course, the new minister says, look, I'm still going to investigate this. I'm not sure. I'm hearing allegations. I suppose it would be helpful to the minister if you, who is alleging political interference, could assist him with some evidence. Do you have such evidence?
Absolutely, we do have some evidence, and we have every intention to write. We have already written to him. We just have to release the letter to him and request for an audience with him. And hopefully, he's a better minister than the previous one. Patel was just stubborn, arrogant. Even his own SACP could not rein him in. He was just too arrogant, and even President Ramaphosa was obviously scared of him for some reason. I don't know. He never held the man accountable. He's messed up not only the NLC, but so many of the public institutions, agencies that fall under the jurisdiction or under the watch of the Trade Industry and Competition Ministry. So he's good riddance, but he has tainted the process from the word go. One, the panel, how was the panel selected that was overseeing this process? But here's the thing, Thabo, when the previous board left, the RFP was done and dusted. And himself, he actually, minister, he renegated on his responsibility as a minister. He delayed the process. Why do you think Ithuba managed to get an extra 2 years? It was because of his incompetency, and nobody has held him accountable. He's costing the country. And after tainting the process with delay, he actually interfered in the selection of the panel. It was not independent, and there was no transparency. I mean, even you guys don't know how the process unfolded.
So do you think it would have been in the interest of the minister that Ithuba gets this license again?
No. We're not here to speak for anybody. We are just saying that his negligence, his failure to execute his mandate as a minister at the time has caused for the delay in the new operator. One, secondly, he has interfered with the process to a point where the panel, there was no transparency, there was no criteria on who gets to be there and on what basis. And thirdly, obviously, we believe that he's got his own favorites. He was preparing the ground so that when the new minister comes, he continues on the ground that he has started. He is late, that is tainted and that is flawed. And we are saying to the other bidders, we encourage them as civil society to say, you guys, if you are reading about people having got this deal already without the process being completed, then you should be worried. Then you should raise the issue. And I'm sure they are waiting in the sidelines to say when it doesn't go their way, they will litigate. But we have the hard evidence why and how the process was tainted.
Tebogo, appreciate your time. Let's give you the much appreciated. Tebogo Sithathu, he speaks on behalf of a civil society organization. Calling now for the lottery's license application process to be reviewed. United Civil Society in Action is the grouping there.